Hello. This video is more so a personal journal than any sort of, message to anyone in particular. Though at the same time, this may be valuable for some, so maybe I'll end up posting this. And the reason why I'm doing it like this is simply because I've been in such a place of peace and silence, let's say just today, and um, feeling need to share anything in particular isn't always really the case at all. I mean, as I've gotten to know myself better and got to know my design and different aspects of my own journey, the need to come out and, I don't know, fix or change the world in any particular way, it becomes less and less apparent, less and less of a drive. Previous periods of my experience had kind of been fueled by a desire to change the world, or bring solutions to people or things, or even holding a certain teaching and feeling a need to teach something in particular, although obviously there's sharing being done, maybe like this video or others or other posts that I make, but often, especially maybe over the past year or so, maybe longer, the call to share is really just a reflection of my own process, a reflection and a feeling of, an innocent joy that comes from sharing and writing and expressing. I'm a triple air sign as well in this incarnate body, so there's a lot of mental activity and desire to communicate. However, much of what I felt called, at least in this moment, to just journal about and talk about and reflect on is something I've been noticing. We could say, I guess, this past year and a half has been quite prevalent, especially on social media. But just in the past few days, I just was noticing a couple of reflections and in social media lands and various debates on topics in various communities, or communities kind of clashing together. Communities meaning, various siloed groups of perspectives, dogmas, teachings, principles, specifically within the wellness spirituality communities. But we see this in all regards, and obviously we see this on the topic of COVID and lockdowns. And I mean, since the beginning of time, we have these siloed groups, tribes, and religions, cultures, nations. In the chaotic science community, we call them shields of energy collectives that hold a certain frequency. And that would be more of the pure version versus much of what we find distorted here on the planet. But this whole kind of topic of disagreements and opposing opinions or opposing perspectives and reflections, ideas, ideals, dogmas, cultish behavior. I mean, this has been since the beginning of time, in a sense. Not so much, because the beginning of time was quite nicer than this fallen matrix we've come to know, and this fallen planet that we've been on for quite some time. However, there has been times and periods where things have been very nice, and then other periods where, yes, this increasing dichotomy of polarizing opinions, perspectives, ideas, beliefs, etc. And so, of course, this brings much debate and disagreement among collective tribes and groups, and frequencies of individuals, people who share those beliefs and perspectives, and even to the degree of varying levels of manipulation and control, and killing even over these beliefs and all of that. And so this kind of versus game, winner loser, right wrong type dynamic, which is kind of the product of this dualistic realm that we exist in, and the common individual not residing in a non-dual, realized space of themselves being all of creation, knowing themselves as the source, and thus collapsing these dualities. We find these endless kind of pinging and ponging perspectives and beliefs, very very much perpetuated through the disconnection of heart and mind. The disconnection and the separation between the many dimensional layers of our being. So it becomes hard to assimilate, that there could be multiple truths. There could be many different perspectives in which hold validity. There could be two opposing things that somehow still hold truth, or that there's a bit of both. There's a gray area in between the black and white. This has I know been a journey of my own to reconcile, and is a journey of all of us in so many ways. And when it's not reconciled, we find ourselves picking sides. We find ourselves holding on to certain maybe ideas or concepts. I know, related to human design, I have an open ajna, so the open ajna is very much about holding to concepts, believing concepts could be absolutely true and there's nothing else, creating dogmas out of that, which I've observed on my journey, and the need to be right, the need to be viewed as right or intelligent. So we hold to certainties, those with open ajna, right? But even human design aside, this is kind of a predominant theme that we can observe in the collective sphere, and I know in my own individual space, and what I've just been observing, in some of these varying groups, of different health perspectives or spiritual viewpoints, or, again, viewpoints on all the common things we're finding in this world today. This creates a lot of division when we're picking sides, when we're believing that only one way is right. It doesn't bring us to a place of communion, of peace, of love. And paradoxically and ironically, that's really all we're seeking. We're in the holding to particular ideas, or the holding to a specific side, or taking a side and thinking the other side is wrong or right. We're really only seeking love anyways, and peace. I know for myself, that's what I'm seeking for sure. Everything else failed to provide any eternal, lasting fulfillment. So if we're simply seeking this love and this peace and this joyfulness, then why not actually experience that directly, like embody that directly, and see that when we're holding sides and creating these intense, polarizing energies, demonizing the other side, this type of tendency, how this is obviously pulling us away from this peace, clouding this peace and this love. It's creating a lot of delusion, thinking that if we hold to this side, or holding to this perspective, or to this dogma long enough, we'll arrive at peace and love at some point, right? Even though we see the delusion that can present, and we see that it's not really providing that love and peace here in this moment, in this intense dichotomy between the other side and the right side, the wrong side, the truth, the falsehood, this or that, like the ping pong of black and white, of the dualism. It's not really providing, it's creating a lot of resistance. So we see that, well, how is that going to lead to peace and love? A place of understanding, of compassion, of actually listening, listening and hearing what this other side is saying. This is where we come to a certain communion. This is where we can come to a sense of peace, not necessarily by agreeing, not necessarily by needing to hold that belief as well, or that perspective, but by recognizing that there can be peace within polarizing topics. There can be peace within opposing views. There can be peace within different perspectives. And, what's the paradox of it all, and the irony is, often those who actually can embody that and can live that peace and that compassion, that understanding, they often will be led to objective truths. Not to say that there's only one objective truth about anything in particular, but they will be more so led to objective truths. I know for myself, I've just been continuously led to what I view to be, the teachings that are, most pure and true, the things that are most consistent, the things that we can always kind of come back to, the things that cannot be argued or cannot be refuted. It's like the golden rule: treat another as you desire to be treated. Who can refute that? Somehow we've found a million possible ways in all these different religions to somehow continue to refute all of the other beliefs on top of that. But every religion at the fundamental level is teaching that. So we can see how diluted the attempt at holding beliefs and ideas of all these various things just keeps us away from the things that actually matter, the teachings that actually matter, the teachings that truly are going to pave the way for our ascension, our awakening, our true embodiment of source. This is it. So that's the kind of paradox, is the one who can have that compassion and understanding for all these different perspectives is not compromising their views. They're seeing that energy they're cultivating within that dynamic, within that exchange, within that communication, they're guided perpetually back to the truth of their own being. And this is, of course, where it all leads, where we're in this time and this evolution and this space where we respect the pathless path of the individual, where we remember ourselves as God source and know that that is the guidance, and that it doesn't need to be justified. It doesn't need to be convinced of others. Others don't need to be convinced of your path, or manipulated to believe what you believe, to feel more safe in that collective agreement. You see, so of course collective shared understanding, shared perspectives is very fulfilling, and it's very it's liberating in some way, or it's more so it just simply feels wholesome in a human body to have others to reflect things that you also share. But the reality is, it's only going to be a reflection, like the mirror. It's only going to reflect who we are. So it's not ever going to add anything to who we are or be more than what we are. It's only going to be a reflection. And so there has to be a trusting, a knowing in one's own resonance and one's own path and one's own direction, and a feeling of truth within that, which can, of course, be frightening, and fearful as we're healing through all of these. I know for myself that's certainly been a process. But nonetheless, we start to reside in the middle of everything when we come there, because we're not needing to hold to any particular external idea, dogma, cultish kind of perspectives, like very rigid beliefs on anything in particular, because it's not going to provide any more safety. It may provide the illusion of safety, or the illusion of, the protection of fear and protection from the other side. Like I said, the other evil side, the ones that believe the opposite. It may provide a protection layer. But in truth, if you are God, if you are the source, you are inclusive of all things. Every aspect of consciousness is a reflection of you in some form. It doesn't mean that's your preference at this time, right? That's the whole purpose of this individual expression. And as we navigate it, we're not going to live everything now. Like we are in this individuated expression. So that means we'll have an individual, unique, and detailed experience, and that is ultimately what we're coming back to. And that's the reflection I'm sharing here, is the return to that knowing within myself, of my own knowing, my own resonance, who I am truly in this individual expression. And from the knowing of that, then there is a connectivity within all other beings, because we see the uniqueness, and we love the uniqueness of all other beings and what they're here to express and how they're to share specific things. And so once again, it doesn't mean we just agree with everything. It doesn't mean that we're not upholding righteousness as we come into that. It means we're respecting the free will of all other beings, as long as it's not doing harm, right? That's the limit. When it's doing harm to any other being in particular, then that's where we have to find the balance, of how we are to integrate and interact with that. Again, it doesn't mean we're controlling or manipulating other beings. It means that there's a natural desire to uphold righteousness and what is true. And so this is really what's to be focused on, because, when I look at, like I said, all these different, communities and tribes, these different debates of what's this and this health, principle that's better than this health principle, or this way that's better than this way. A lot of times these debates are held within all of the myriad of the minor beliefs. Should we eat this or should we eat that? Should we do this practice or that practice? Is this meditation better than that meditation? Obviously the vaccine is a big discussion, like all these different kind of topics, but the reality is, they're all kind of like subsets of things. When love and the golden rule and like the level of integrity we can have and respect for one another and compassion and understanding and love, patience and dignity, these are all the kind of like the core principles, like the shield of Calais from KS Freedom teachings. It represents the full wheel of our behavior and our energy that comes before all of these other things. That technique, this method, that method, all of these other minor choices that we go about through our life that everyone has their different opinion and perspective with. And I'm saying this from my own experience, having explored not every community obviously, but so many of these varying communities and perspectives, and having experimented with so many different teachings, and whether it's spiritual or personal development or health wise, and even politics and all that. Like there's so many different, I reflect on my own journey of just like so many different sideload communities that I've enjoyed the perspectives of and learned from. And all I've seen, by going through all of these, is just all of these kind of siloed perspectives, that create communities and cultures around them that at the core, have purity, but then as it goes out and expands out, those outer layers start to combat against the other layers of the other communities, and it's so funny to watch. And of course I've fallen prey to this as well, because it's a product of the mind, it's a product of holding to dogmas and rigid belief structures, and opinions, and all of this. And as we come back to truth, it doesn't mean these things are not there, because even the most enlightened of beings I've communicated with still have many different perspectives than the other enlightened being, and in my own journey, in my own expression, compared to friends I have or other teachers, we all have an individual viewpoint. It doesn't matter how enlightened you are, you're not going to be a carbon copy of someone else. So it's just that when we are residing in that non-dual essence, in that realization of our source, we can have at least understanding and compassion for that, and then live that, so that we're not becoming carbon copies of each other. We can hold varying different perspectives and opinions, because it's an infinite combination, right? It's like, okay, we know ourselves as source, but then we have an infinite combination of perspectives of how to change a tire on a car better than this method or that method. What's the diet? What's the I don't know, the furniture that one thinks is the best, and all that. It's like you could think of a million infinite things. There's going to be an infinite amount of combinations as to what one being is holding as their perspectives, and what another being is going to hold as their perspectives. And so it's a thing the mind can't wrap its head around. And the cultish kind of dogmatic absolutism viewpoints or way, that way of being, that is so chaotic for that mind. That world of infinite possibilities is too chaotic for that mind. So I'd rather hold to absolutist perspectives or dogmas or whatever. And again, having a completely open ajna on my own journey, that's been one of the greatest challenges, and also where the greatest of wisdom comes as well, as it is in human design with open centers. But it's just, it's a funny thing, these infinite combinations of shared beliefs and perspectives that only the true masters, only the true enlightened, the true adepts are going to be comfortable in, to be able to live and not be sucked into the perspectives of others just because that may make them feel more accepted in some form, or or more certain about something. We can come to our knowing and reflect within that, see how that guides us in our pathless path, as much as we can share these great teachings that are objectively true in various respects, and in other respects maybe not. So yeah, I mean, I don't know who will watch this, but I feel this is worthy of a post. But it's just finding our center with that, and just recognizing where we may pick sides, and how we can just rest in the middle and see the truth. just been observing, and I observe this within my own right, but I observe this in so many lights of different debates and perspectives and communities coming at each other from all these different lenses and angles. And um, it's like, well, there's truth in so many sides. There's all these different um, things that we can take, and receive, better term, receive from, seeing these differences. Because, I was telling a friend the other day, you could read a book and the whole book could be garbage for you except one line, and that one line could change your whole experience. It could shift you, it could bring such clarity. So we can't rule out anything, really. um, and this is what I feel it means to live oneness, to live the knowing of God source, knowing that you are God source. So if everything is a reflection of you, then, well, nothing can be left out. So um, yeah, hope you enjoyed that. This little journal. Deep love.